Hi everybody, it is Tuesday and you are in the kitchen cooking with Evie. Today we are going to be making something with pumpkin. It is a wonderful time of the year. We just did some, over the weekend we went to a pumpkin patch and we picked up lots of different types of gourds and squashes, all things that are so good for us, so healthy and so delicious this time of year. So today I'm going to be making a maple pumpkin breakfast cookie. And I call it a breakfast cookie because not only is it delicious, but it has a lot of healthy, good things in it for us, including pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds, as well as roasted pureed pumpkin. In addition to rolled oats, all of which add lots of fiber, lots of vitamin A and vitamin C, which are very good for our immune system, lots of vitamins and minerals. So we want to be adding in different things. A lot of people have asked me, well, what do you do for breakfast? If you don't do eggs, if you don't do grains. This is a great substitute for that. It's also a great substitute for an energy bar or having a quick snack on the go, because it's something that you can put into your purse, into your car, and take along with you and have something healthy to snack on. All right, so to start out this dish, you want to be cooking up squash, or you don't need to cook that squash up. You can use canned squash or canned pumpkin or canned butternut squash. You can use canned sweet potato. There are so many different squashes that you can use, and sweet potato, that you can use as a substitute for a straight pumpkin in this dish. However, and I have a few different items here, which are I just picked them from my garden. This is a Carnival Squash, a very small one, albeit. That's my garden for you, but very, very sweet. This is another variety of squash. It kind of looks like an orange acorn squash. I'm sure it's going to be a nice sweet flavor. Acorn squash, by the way, is another good pureed squash that you could use in this dish as well. We'll be using carrots as well today. All of these, by the way, you notice very orange colors, right? That indicates the beta carotene that's in it. Beta carotene is a precursor of vitamin A that is so good for us in terms of for our immune system, for our bone health. It's anti-cancer, it's an antioxidant. So keep a lookout for orange foods and add them in. Sweet potato as well. Butternut squash, yellow, orange, even some red foods have this beta carotene in them. So what I did was I cut my pumpkin squash in half. I had a pumpkin pie pumpkin or pie pumpkin, and I cut it in half lengthwise this way, and I turned it down onto a baking sheet that I had lightly coated with olive oil, and I baked that at 400 degrees for about half hour. At which point it's so nice and creamy, it should be very easy to scoop out that flesh from the skin. And then what I did, I just put it into a container, and that's what I'll be using today. I didn't even puree it yet. As you can see, it has some texture to it as well. I found when I mix this into the dish, it mixes in just fine without me having to really puree it into a smooth texture. If you would like to do that, by all means, feel free to do that ahead of time. It'll make it that much easier to mix things in, right? Okay, so let's get started. To start out, we want to mix together our dry ingredients. All right, and as I mentioned, we are going to be using rolled oats, but I also like to add in a little bit of steel cut oats as well. I like to get my oats organic, and I find that by mixing the two different types of oats, the rolled oats is a little bit more processed than the steel cut oats, which means that the fibers have been broken down, the food's been manipulated a little bit more. So this way I get a little bit of both in when I'm making this dish. So I'm going to add in a cup of the rolled oats, and these are just old-fashioned organic oats that I got from my local grocery store. And I'm going to add in a 1/4 cup of, so make sure I've got that right. Yep, 1/4 cup of my steel cut oats. You'll see that there's a difference between, here I'll hold them up. You can see the difference. These are flaky, whereas the steel cut oats are more granular, crunchier, a little bit more substance to them. And I like the way what it adds to the texture of this recipe. Now, if you don't have steel cut oats, feel free to use another 1/4 cup of your rolled oats as well. All right. My goodness, my printing is so small on this, I'm having a hard time seeing what I wrote. Okay, there we go. All right. Now, before we get started, I also wanted to prepare I'm going to be using a chia egg instead of a regular egg in this recipe. You can use either one. If you use eggs in your diet, then by all means we'll be using 1 egg later on. But right now, I want to start that chia egg started. You could use a flax egg as well. The chia egg and a flax egg are nothing more than 1 tablespoon of either ground chia. So you'll see I have ground chia seed here. So either 1 tablespoon of the chia seed or 1 tablespoon of the ground flax seed. And I'm going to add in 3 tablespoons of warm water. So it's 1 tablespoon of seeds to 3 tablespoons of water. And then I'm just going to let it sit and it will thicken up. So it's 1, 2, and 3. All right, and I'm going to let that sit and mix together. Now, you can see it's very liquidy right now. In a few minutes, we'll take a look at it again. All right, so my chia seed is ready. I'm going to set that aside. Let's get back to those dry ingredients. Okay, so I've added in now 1 cup of my rolled oats, 1 cup of my, 1/4 cup of my steel cut oats. All right, and I'm going to add in 2 teaspoons of cinnamon and 1 teaspoon of, I'm going to add in 1 teaspoon of allspice. So let's do this in order. 2 teaspoons of my cinnamon. I'm going to move my little pumpkins out of the way here so I don't knock them over. Or my little squashes. All right, so I'm adding in 2 teaspoons of my cinnamon. All right. And 1 teaspoon of, you can either add in nutmeg or allspice. Let's see if I have 1 teaspoon left of my allspice. If not, I might top it off with some nutmeg. I like allspice because I find it has a little bit sweeter flavor than nutmeg. I'm probably getting about, only about a ½ teaspoon of my allspice here. So what I will do is add to that to get 1 full teaspoon. I'm going to add the nutmeg on top of that teaspoon to make it a full teaspoon. So, just like so. All right, and I'm going to add that one in as well. So, allspice or nutmeg, kind of interchangeable. They're a little bit different in flavor. As I said, the allspice tends to be a little bit sweeter than the nutmeg. I want to add in about 1/4 teaspoon of my sea salt. Salt has a way of bringing out flavors. So we don't want to add in too much salt so it tastes salty, but we want to add enough to enhance the flavors that we are adding into it. And I want to add in 1½ teaspoons of my baking powder. And in order to do that, I actually have, let's see if I actually have a measuring spoon that's 1.5 teaspoons, which happens to be 1/2 tablespoon. And I do have that. So I'm going to add in 1.5 teaspoons of my baking powder. All right, and then remember I said we're going to add in some more healthy fiber and some healthy oils that are in these. But we're going to add 1/2 cup each of sunflower seeds, raw, unsalted sunflower seeds, and raw, unsalted pumpkin seeds, also known as pepitas. All right. This is going to give us a nice crunchy flavor. I always find that so satisfying. All right. And let me just mix those together. And I'm going to set that aside. Let me just show you what that looks like. All right, I'm going to set this aside so that I can mix my liquid ingredients together. This is a great way to bake when you put together the dry ingredients and then the liquid ingredients. So the softer ingredients, I should say, because part of this recipe includes dates. Now, the question is, where did I put my dates? All right, let's look and see where they are. Ah, they were hiding behind the camera, of course. I want to add in about 3/4 of a cup of chopped dates. Now, I use the Deglet dates. Deglet dates you'll see mentioned, you'll see medjool dates mentioned. Deglet dates tend to come already pitted, which is a bonus, as well as they're not as moist as your medjool dates. So I like to use the Deglet dates, and I'm going to say use 1 cup. I'm sorry, I think I said 3/4. I'm going to use 1 cup, which is probably about 2 dozen. Let's see, 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15. All right, 16, 17, 18. Let's start with 18 of these, and we'll see how that works. Let me see if I can adjust this so that you can see my countertop a little bit better. See what's going on, right? There we go. You may not be able to see my head, but you'll be able to see what I'm doing down here. All right, so I am starting off by just cutting these into probably 1/8 of an inch strips, just cutting through each one of these dates. Now, you could, if you'd like, use a food processor and process them that way. They tend to be very sticky, and for that reason, I like to chop my dates by hand. Sometimes if you're working with almond flour, it's good to chop them with about 1 tablespoon or so of almond flour, and that helps, or any kind of flour that you're using, that helps to keep the pieces from sticking together. In this case, I'm just winging it here. Now, one of the nice things about making your own snack bar like this, or a breakfast bar, is that it's going to be sweet because we are working with sweet, natural sugars that are bound up naturally in the fruit. Yes, dates tend to be sweeter, on the sweet side. If someone is diabetic, by all means, and counting, looking after the amount of sugar in your diet, do be careful with dried fruit, because drying the fruit concentrates the sugars into it and takes out a lot of the liquid that helps fill you up. But for this case, in this case, it's better to have a dried fruit than, say, adding in a refined sugar. Because, as I mentioned, the sugar is bound up in that fiber. Fiber helps slow down that absorption and helps even out any type of insulin surge or blood sugar level surge. All right. So I chopped up about 18 dates. Probably could have gotten away with 17 and been okay. I'm not going to pack this down, but we're going to go with that. All right. So I have my dates. All right. So dates are added. And now we're going to add in our pumpkin puree. And as I said, I want to add in about 3/4 of a cup of pumpkin puree. And I'm going to do that just by estimating in my 1 cup measure here. Let's see. It doesn't have lines along the sides, but the nice thing about baking this type of a dish or this type of a recipe is it's not that particular about quite the amount that I'm adding in here. So I'm pushing it down, and you can see it's about a scant cup of pumpkin puree. Working with a pie pumpkin, oh, so nice. It has a little bit of sweetness and a lot of flavor to it that you sometimes don't get in those larger pumpkins. All right, now, so I have this in. Now, I am going to add in some sweetness in the form of maple syrup. You could use honey in this case as well, but because it is a fall dish, I thought the maple syrup would be very fitting. So, you can see here, I've got my dates, I've got my pumpkin, and now I'm going to add in 3 tablespoons of my maple syrup. Now, this recipe is going to make 20 cookies. So even adding this amount of sweetness to the dish, it really distributes it over 20 different serving sizes, or servings, I should say. All right, so I've added my pumpkin, my dates, my maple syrup. Now I want to add in, remember I told you about that chia egg that we made? Remember how liquidy it was? Look at it now. Very thick, very viscous. I'm going to add that in. And stir that into my mixture here. And as I'm doing that, I'm pureeing the pumpkin. It's nice and soft, so it's very easy to do. In addition, I want to add in 1 tablespoon of coconut oil. Now, I had this sitting at room temperature so that it, I actually warmed it so that it is liquid again. But if you're used to, this is what coconut oil typically looks like. All right. And the other very healthy ingredient that we're going to be adding in comes now. It's in the form of shredded carrots. So I am going to just show you here. I am just going to grate. I'm going to start with 1 carrot. I want about 3/4 of a cup. So about as much, as the same amount of a grated carrot as I had for my pumpkin. Now again, carrots very high in beta-carotene, which is a precursor of vitamin A, high in antioxidants. Antioxidants are very good for us. They actually help with cellular function. They have no calories, and yet they help our cells function properly and stay healthy. They're anti-cancer. So we want to be able to get in as many of these wonderful antioxidants, phytonutrients as we can. And we do that by adding in colorful vegetables and fruits. Today's color is orange. All right. Well, I guess it would have been smart if maybe I had grated some of this before I started the show, but that's okay. It allowed me to have some time to talk to you about the importance of these antioxidants and why it's so important that we add in these natural ingredients into the foods that we eat, and why when you're eating, let's see, I just did 1 carrot and I have probably about 2/3 of a cup, let's say. But not surprisingly, when you're eating processed foods, you're not getting the benefits of, I have about 2/3 of a cup, so I'm going to grate a 2nd carrot. Processed foods tend to be high in added sugars. Remember I was saying that the sugars found in nature are bound up with fiber. Fiber is so important because it slows down the absorption of sugars. So even if there is sugar in a dish, if it's high in natural fibers, that helps. And I say natural fibers, not processed fibers. It helps to regulate our blood sugar levels. More importantly, the fiber that's found in there, the soluble fiber, helps feed our microbiome. Our microbiome are all those organisms that are in our gut that help digest food and make enzymes and make more vitamins for us and just generally keep us healthy. So we want to feed them healthy foods as well. All right, so perfect. I have about 1 cup here. Let's give a few extra gratings since I have a little more that I can grate without grating my fingers, hopefully. We don't want that in our recipe. All right, good. All right. Alrighty then. And that is the final ingredient in this delicious dish. I'm just going to get out the last bits of carrot. And I can see I have a little bit of maple syrup that's stuck here. Add that in, move out of the way. And now I'm just going to mix up these wet ingredients. So remember, the wet ingredients were the dates, the chopped dates, the pureed pumpkin, that flax egg or chia egg in this case, and I also realized that I wanted to add in a little bit more chia to have a little crunch. in the dish. And I don't think I added that to my dry goods. So let's add that in. I'm going to add in a half tablespoon of ground chia. Now you could add in ground flax again as well. But I'm going to add in the ground chia, so that's 1. And a half teaspoons of that. 1.5 teaspoons equals half of a tablespoon. All right, give that a little bit of a stir in there. All right. So now we have our dry ingredients, our wet ingredients. I'm going to stir those wet ingredients into the dry. All right. And this is going to make a thick batter. I've set my oven at 350 degrees to preheat. So if you want to do that now, go ahead and do that. So it'll be nice and hot by the time we're ready to add in or put our cookies into the oven. Now, as I said, this recipe makes about 20 cookies. What's nice about this is you can freeze the cookies afterwards so that you have them on hand when you want them. Or what you can do is, do batch cooking and just cook up a few of them at a time and leave the batter in the refrigerator for a few days. I kind of like to cook up the cookies all at once and then have them ready from the freezer when I want them. All right. Just going to clear that off. Let me remove our dates. Okay, let me show you the batter. Here we go. You can see it's a pretty thick batter. All right. Here comes some fun. So, what I like about this recipe is it's a nice thick batter, as I said, which allows you to press your batter onto the cookie sheet. So I'm going to, per cookie, I'm going to use about a rounded tablespoon, like so, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the lid from a small mason jar top and push the batter. All right, so maybe I'll use a little bit more. Push the batter into that lid, like so. And then all I need to do, lift it up, and you have a nice thick cookie. And you do this until you use up all the batter. All right. And it's quick, it's easy. You can, I am using a Silpat liner. You can use parchment paper for this. Especially with parchment paper, you might want to just lightly spray coat the parchment with a little bit of olive oil. But we'll lay out about 6 cookies right here. You can see it's quick, it's easy. Now, if you don't have a lid like this, you can just form a circle, ball with your hands and flatten them and press them down. There you go. So, I'm going to go put these in the oven. I'm going to bake them for 30 minutes, all right? If you like them a little bit crispier, or if your oven is maybe a little bit cooler, you might need to leave them in for up to 40 minutes. But let me show you Let me put these in. And here's what they look like when they come out of the oven. All right, they're nice, browned, crispy. All right. The inside is still chewy. Very satisfying. I like the chew on it. It's something that's going to take a little while to eat, to slow down that eating process so your body has time to realize that it's eating something and filling up. Really good. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to be baking up this second batch with probably 3 or 4 trays. So I might have to do a few after, or I might just save the batter and bake it up later on, because I already have these wonderful cookies. Now, when you take these off, what you want to do, they slide off the tray very easily. Just put them onto a drying rack. I have a cookie drying rack here. Those are good. And let them dry, let them cool. And when they're cool, you want to put them into a container. You might want to layer some parchment paper in between so they don't stick together. And then put them in the refrigerator to keep them for longer. Or do the same thing and pop them in the freezer so that they're ready later on when you want them. They should keep for a pretty long time in there. Okay, so there you have it. We have our wonderful pumpkin cookies. First pumpkin of the season for me. Let me know if you've been making things, all good things pumpkin, and let me know if you have any suggestions. Also, if you like this recipe and you like this type of eating, you want to eat healthier but looking for some recipes, please, by all means, like, follow, and subscribe to Cooking with Evey so that you will get notifications of the class in your inbox every week. All right? So until next week, happy eating. And I look forward to hearing whether you have any suggestions of some dishes that you'd like to see me making. All right? Take care for now. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.